like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place.
Thank you for joining our ongoing webinar series on healthy longevity from the National University of Singapore, Yong Loo Lin School of Medicine. This is another in our series on lifestyle interventions in aging, and I'm very excited that we're going to have Alexey Moskalev here today, who's done a lot of work on the genetics of aging and worked on geroprotectors, but also today also is now focusing a lot on lifestyle interventions and how to stay healthy as long as possible. Please use the Q&A function if you would like to ask questions today. And before we start, we're going to go to our vignette from someone, a local person in the Singapore population. And this time we're going to talk to Miss Eileen Bygrave. She's a fashion and lifestyle consultant, and she was the first Asian retail director for Italian luxury giant Salvatore Ferragamo, and currently acts in a consulting role. So let's hear from her.
Aging is strange. For a long time, I didn't want to admit my age because I was a grandmother already in my 40s, and I was at the height of my career in Hong Kong. It's not good to be a grandma and aging in the fashion industry. But there comes a time when you have to admit that you are no longer in the autumn of your years, but in the winter. I think exercise is very important. So I do two kinds of exercises I consider. One is the formal one, where I've been taking yoga lessons ever since I retired, all right? So it's good because it teaches me to breathe and it's very calming. The other exercise I do, which is Nordic stick walking, a way of walking which trains your upper body, keeps your pace. All right, so that's what I call the Nordic stick walking, which I do normally on Sundays. But very important, I've joined a group called the NAMAS group. NAMA stands for Nature and Mindful Walking Awareness Study. It's walking through the forests and being aware of nature, and it helps to improve your mind. So for me, the NAMAS walk on Saturdays usually is very important. I think it's very important for all of us to have a big interest in everything going on. You know, the tendency when you get older is to close up your mind On the contrary, I think it's very important to open your eyes out to the wide world, to be interested in everything. So apart from reading, I listen to the radio a lot. I listen to a program called Click, which keeps me up to date with things IT, because, you know, I'm a dinosaur as far as IT is concerned. The other thing I do, which is of interest, and it's a new one since COVID, it's taken an interest in cooking. And because of lots of friends who are in lockdown, I tend to cook. And they tease me because I make tons and tons and tons of lasagna at one go. Then I get them delivered, or they come and pick it up, and we do an exchange. This is very important during COVID, where we have to keep in touch with people. Okay? I've started to be interested again in sketching. I will show you that one of the things that stresses people out is if you're not prepared, you know. So what I do before I travel, I sketch out the whole wardrobe that I'm going to take with me, so that when I arrive and I have a very busy program, the clothes are immediately there and I can change from one thing to the other. I think the question of death worries everyone when you are in the sort of winter of your life, right? Do you know, I never thought about mortality and dying whilst my husband was alive. But after he passed away, I suddenly realized, oh my goodness, it's my turn. But so when I read the newspapers, for example, it says Bedok, there is going to be a new hospital. It'll be ready in 2030. And I start to think, am I going to be living to see that? So every time there's a project on, I start calculating. But I think the important thing is to have lots of friends, do lots of things with them, and have a real good cohort of friends. I think this is the social bit, you know. People say, oh, eat less. Okay, you all know about diets. But one thing I do is I do not snack. If I can, I don't give up my food, but I do not snack. Okay, number one. Eat less. Laugh a lot. I think that's important, you know, with friends. Exercise as much as you can, but the important thing is choose an exercise that you really enjoy. Okay, if something you don't enjoy, skip it. You know, when I did yoga, after a while, I actually enjoyed the movement and the breathing, right? And the walking is marvelous. You see lots of things. You suddenly open your eyes to trees, to flowers, to leaves. So enjoy your exercise. That's important.
So Alexei Moskalev is a corresponding member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, director of biology, the head of the Laboratory of Geroprotective and Radioprotective Technologies at the Institute of Biology of the Federal Research Center, the Komi Scientific Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Today, he's going to be talking about what drives aging and can we slow down the aging? Can we slow down the clock? It's been, I've known Alexei for about 10 years now, and it's always interesting to hear his thoughts on aging, and I think everyone will be interested in his words. So over to you, Alexei.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Aging is one of the most complex biological programs. There are many damages, errors, like genomic instability, epigenetic drift, mitochondrial dysfunction, loss of proteostasis involved into processes of aging, and also response to damage. Both of these make system changes like systemic inflammation, impaired regeneration of tissues, alteration of regulations, internal clock failure, chronic stress, and increased biological barrier permeability, metabolic diseases that increase the risk of aging-related diseases, frailty, and death. One of the conception of aging and longevity is a longevity program. In favorable conditions, like abundance of food, our body produces growth hormone and IGF-1 growth signaling factor that increase cell growth and reproduction, but decrease stress resistance that can induce aging. At moderate stresses like caloric restriction, high or low temperatures, the growth hormone IGF-1 signaling decreased, and also growth and the proliferation of cells, but the repressed stress resistance, so that can increase the longevity. Now we know these mechanisms in more details. There is a gene network for the longevity program. The good news is some of the nodes of this network could be affected by small molecules, potential geroprotectors, as well as some nutrients, including amino acids, glucose. The mechanisms of aging nowadays we can study using interspecies comparisons of genomes between long-living and short-living species. In a big collaboration with Vadim Zgladyshev lab from Harvard Medical School, my lab, and the Beijing Institute of Genome, we sequenced the genome and transcriptomes of different organs of small bat, which is the smallest long-living mammal in wild nature. This bat has unique substitutions and deletions in the genes of receptors of growth hormone and IGF-1 receptor. It corresponds with the longevity program conception. The other part of longevity program is stress response regulation. In collaboration with colleagues from Beersheva University in Israel and the Bucharest University from Romania, we sequenced the transcriptomes of gray whale, one of the long-living mammal, and compare it with the transcriptomes of different organs of other whales and other mammals, including short-living like mice, and observed overrepresentation of activity of genes of DNA repair, autophagy, and ubiquitination that are proteostasis mechanisms. Based on this knowledge, we can propose some potential interventions in aging, including elimination of protein cross-linking, suppression of mobile genetic elements in the genome, telomere lengthening, suppression of chronic inflammation, maintenance of lysosome in mitochondrial activity, inhibition of particular aging genes and proteins, and also activation of longevity program genes like FOXO, MPK, NRF2, CLOTA, etc. But most of these interventions are future interventions. But nowadays we have some available interventions that can also delay the rate of aging. For example, nutrition, eating behavior, regular physical activity, sleep quality, stress management, potential geroprotectors. Among macronutrients, essential amino acids are one of the most important nutrients. For example, BCAA and methionine are essential and can prevent liver fibrosis and sarcopenia. But the bad news is the increased level of these macronutrients, BCA and methionine, can increase the risk of metabolic syndrome. For example, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, atherosclerosis, thrombosis, some autoimmune diseases. That's why we need to restrict the excessive amount of these amino acids in our food. Mostly all of you know that trans fats are atherogenic and diabetogenic. It contains in highly processed food like chips, like some cookies. It can increase the risk of heart attacks, dementia, liver diseases, cholelithiasis. Also, we have some more beneficial fats. For example, omega-6 and omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. But the proportion ratio of these fatty acids should be as low as possible, because too much omega-6 have pro-inflammatory effects on our health. But we need both omega-6 and omega-3 because most of them are essential fatty acids. We also have to uptake every day some amount of monounsaturated fatty acids from olive oil, avocado, nuts, and it decreases mortality and the risk of some aging-related diseases. The diet with the amount of carbohydrates less than 40% or more than 70% contributed to increased mortality. There are two condition groups of carbohydrates. A risky group of fast or simple carbohydrates from refined food like white rice, sugar, sweets, and slow or composite carbohydrates from whole grains, from beans, from vegetables, berries, and the fruits. Too much fructose can lead to hyperlipidemia, pancreas cancer, obesity, insulin resistance, cataract, fatty degeneration of the liver, coronary heart disease, gout. That's why we need to control the amount of fructose consumption. Fructose is more prominent inducer of advanced glycation end products formation that are one of the main basic mechanisms of aging. Advanced glycation end products not only induce damages of proteins, DNA of our cells and extracellular matrix, but also chronic inflammation and intracellular oxidative stress that are parts of diabetic complications, atherosclerosis, pulmonary fibrosis, cataracts, age-related macular degeneration, some neurological diseases, and inflammatory arthritis. The one of the beneficial intervention is improving of microbiota. Healthy microbiota can provide us some vitamins, amino acids, polyamines, chronic short-chain fatty acids, increase the bioavailability of polyphenols that have anti-inflammatory and potential geroprotective effects on our health. And we can improve our healthy microbiota using in a regular basis prebiotics and metabiotics from food. For example, fermented food like tofu, miso, kimchi can provide metabiotics for our good microbiota, and also prebiotics from some kind of vegetables, leafy vegetables, also berries, fruits can help to support as a food our good microbiota. Disturbances in the microbiota, different kinds of infections, visceral fat, defective mitochondria, senescent cells, advanced glycation and products can induce chronic inflammation. With age, that are the mechanism of many pathologies like depression, cancer, autoimmune diseases, sleep disorder, neurological disorders. But the good news are that our inflammation could be suppressed by micronutrients from our food. Some compounds in leafy vegetables, in cabbage, broccoli, brown rice, green tea, spices, and grapes can decrease the level of inflammation in our body if we are using this every day in our diet. Other mechanism of influence of our diet on the aging speed is hormesis. Beneficial effects of low dose damage to our cell macromolecules and mitochondria by particular compounds. For example, quercetin and sulforaphane can induce damages in our DNA, but in a low amount. Curcumin can damage proteins, resveratrol, carnosine, glucosamine can induce oxidative stress, but such low dose damage can induce stress resistance and decrease the rate of aging. That's why the food with these compounds in some amount could be beneficial for our health. Some good examples of pro-longevity food we can see in a traditional diet. For example, Okinawan diet contains many greens, many vegetables, tofu, miso, sweet potatoes that have polyphenols with the anti-inflammatory features, and the amount of seafood also beneficial. But Okinawan diet is not just diet, it's lifestyle, because the people with this diet also work in a field, use some kind of physical training. A very similar diet is south of Italy diet, Mediterranean diet. I listed some diet recommendations in here. Fish or seafood 2 times a week, legume and nuts at least once a week, intermittent fasting, also replenish of magnesium, vitamin K, spermidine from our food, limit methionine, BCA, refuse sweets, soft drinks and chips, refined dishes. We also need a physical training to prevent aging-related diseases, because regular training can decrease many pathological processes and improve metabolic health and skin conditions and memory. According to Copenhagen City Health Study, physical activity, mostly aerobic cyclic exercises, can add some healthy years to our lifespan. We need not only aerobic exercises, about 15 minutes a day, but also stretching exercises every morning, balance exercises, and strength exercises every 48 hours to prevent sarcopenia and osteoporosis. We also need to improve our sleep because during sleep, the brain is intensively restored. And the duration of deep sleep decreases with age, and we need to pay special attention to this. We can do some interventions to improve our sleep. For example, comfortable temperature, no higher than 22 degrees Celsius, physical activity in the morning predominantly. Don't drink coffee and tea in the second half of the day. Eliminate sources of light and noise at night. Our life is stressful. That's why we need stress management to decrease the mental problems, the rate of aging. We can use many gadgets for this, and also autogenic Schulz training, deep, slow breathing method, meditation, biofeedback, film, music, bibliotherapy, ecotherapy like walking in the garden, time management. We have some interesting examples of potential neuroprotectors as supplements. For example, we have some samples of clinical trials of effectiveness of vitamin K, curcumin, glucosamine, PQQ, alpha-ketoglutarate, quercetin, urolithin A, beta-alanine, berberine, spermidine, Q10, taurine, lycopene, but we need further investigations on this topic. For this, we can use biological age predictors from deep learning in collaboration with the deep longevity team. We established different kind of deep learning biological age clocks to study the effectiveness of potential protectors of different kinds of diet, physical training, stress management to prevent aging-related diseases. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Alexey. That's really interesting. I think it's a sort of a comprehensive assessment of what can be done for healthy aging. I'm sure you talk to people who ask you questions all the time. And so one question I get all the time is, well, that's great. There's 1,000 things there. How do I start to make a meaningful change in my life? What do I do first? How do I develop the right patterns for healthy aging? And maybe you could comment on that a little bit.
I think we can apply some simple daily routine things like improve our eating behavior. For example, I started taking food just 2 times per day. In this situation, I can decrease the calories uptake and also improve my insulin resistance and other parameters of my metabolism. And we know that too much calories decrease the rate of autophagy and other stress response mechanisms in our body, improve proteostasis. That's why this very simple behavior can decrease the risk of diabetes and many other age-related diseases. Also, regular physical training, like aerobic exercises, every 2 days, strength exercises. We need to prevent sarcopenia, osteoporosis, blood vessels problems with age.
Seems like you've
some supplements. It's difficult to say because we need further investigations, clinical trials for this.
It seems like you're taking on a lot of exercise yourself. I see on your Instagram account there's a lot of pictures of you in the gym. So what are you? Yeah. You're training like 3-4 times a week, or what are you doing?
Every morning,
Every
I
morning.
start with the exercises in the gym, but mostly swimming, everyday swimming, but bodybuilding just 3 times a week.
Let's come back a little bit to this concept of geroprotectors. You mentioned a lot of one of the things I think has been hard for the field to understand is that we talk about these 9 hallmarks of aging, and they're stress for DNA damage and inflammation and senescence and all these things, and it seems like such a complicated phenomenon in aging. And on the other hand, there's a whole range of potential interventions that are single interventions that may actually affect systemic aging. So how do you reconcile those differences? How does one thing affect such a complex process?
I'm not sure that we can apply just one thing to prevent aging, because, as you mentioned, we have many aging pathologies and aging-related mechanisms and hallmarks. That's why in the future we will need a combination of targeted interventions into different processes of aging, like cross-linking and stiffness of extracellular matrix, and DNA damages, and retrotranspositions of mobile elements, and systemic inflammation. We need a targetable approach for all of this, I think.
So your thinking is that it's going to be sort of a multifactorial approach is the only solution that's going to have a big effect.
Yes, but not at the same time. We can use as a course repeatedly applying particular interventions, but not simultaneously. From time to time, different interventions into different processes of aging.
Why not simultaneously?
Because all of these interventions have side effects, and also the detoxification ability of our kidney, liver have some limits. We need, time to have rest after intervention.
So your body can deal with 1 or 2 things at a time and not 10, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and in this case, we could not predict the interference between these interventions, because not all of these have just one target. Most of them have many targets and many side effects.
I think that's one of the challenges with natural products is they're almost by definition they're polygenic and they're polyfactorial in their effects. They hit many different pathways, and one of the challenges we have with them is trying to figure out which ones are relevant for aging.
I think most of natural interventions have a hermetic mechanism of action. They induce stress resistance, but at low doses. And if we apply this intervention from time to time, because we need to restore our stress resistance capacity. That's why the effects of these interventions quite low, because we have the threshold of hermetic mechanism of action on aging.
In a sense that may be true with rapamycin. I think one of the most striking things with rapamycin, this is a drug, not a natural product, but one of the most striking things with it is that you can do a 3-month intervention and have an effect in a mouse at least that persists throughout the remainder of the life of the animal. So that to me suggests there has to be some sort of resetting of a clock or restoring of a stress resistance pathways, a Otherwise, you would seem to need to take it regularly to get the effect.
Mhm.
I don't. It would be interesting to test whether a lot of these supplements, whether they work similarly. Is a intermittent dose fine, or do you have to keep taking it to see any benefit? And I think these are all questions we don't really know the answers to yet. You mentioned these deep longevity clocks. Which, there are several different aging biomarkers out there. Do you have any ones you particularly like better than others at this point?
The advantages of deep clocks are that it's quite simple and you can apply in your real life from the applications in your phone. Sometimes we need maybe a more comprehensive clocks, but it's not still available. For example, we don't have clocks for cross-linking of our extracellular matrix and DNA scars in our nuclei of the cell. Deep aging clocks are available, and we can apply it easily in epidemiological and clinical trials.
Yeah, I think this is a major step we have to take, which is to start connecting interventions with clocks and see which interventions move the needle on which clocks. This is, a lot of people are trying to do that now, including us. And I think that it's, if we can really show that these clocks can be changed and continue to get evidence that they link to morbidity and mortality, I think that that's going to be one of the next major steps forward in the aging field.
Completely agree.
Let's come back to amino acids. You talked about amino acids quite a bit, and I think this is a point of real confusion for people because, there's I go to the gym too, and the bodybuilders in there are pouring amino acids, especially branched chain amino acids, into them as fast as they can. People are thinking that amino acids are good and carbs are bad, and yet a lot of the aging data suggests that there are a lot of problems with excess amino acids. How does the average person figure out what the right amount is, and how much does that relate to the amount of exercise they're doing?
It's a good question. Some studies observed that we don't need too much of branched amino acids to strengthen our muscles. We need enough amount. And some people on more vegetarian diet can also have strong muscles because they can use other kind of proteins, vegetable proteins that contains less amount of BCAA and methionine, but still can provide us these essential amino acids. We need all of them, but in enough amount. And more vegetables and more legumin and more nuts in our food can supply us for essential amino acids. I'm not vegetarian. I take some poultry, some fish, but not every day.
And come broadening that out a little bit, so much of what you talked about is really metabolism. And even a lot of the damage that occurs can be through dysregulated metabolism. And so how much of aging is just a breakdown in normal metabolism, and a lot of the interventions are effectively just trying to restore metabolic pathways to something closer to a youthful profile?
I think the basic mechanism of aging are damages of macromolecules like extracellular matrix, DNA, cytoplasmic proteins, but metabolism affects the rate of this damage. That's why it's very important, and that's why our food, our exercises can affect the speed of aging.
So you've got 2 books on aging in Russia now. Unfortunately, they're not in English yet, but if you can read Russian, you should go find them. Give me some information. What's unique to the Russian lifestyle that may be influencing aging that we don't think about in other parts of the world? Or, we talk about personalized aging, and that could be men versus women. It could be people with different genotypes or lifestyles, but it could also be regional effects. So tell us something about aging in Russia.
The life expectancy in Russia is not too high. Mostly, I think it's because of unhealthy behaviors, including eating behavior, in some places too much alcohol taken, and also we have not a comfortable climate, as you know.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and we need to improve our eating behavior. It's the most simple thing which we can do to improve the longevity in Russia, I think.
There's also a big gap between life expectancy in men and women, I think, in Russia, right? It's unusually large.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I know you know this, but I love coming to Russia, and I particularly love the Russian food. And Charmaine had actually never had Russian food before. So today we went out to a place to have Russian food, and the nickname for it was Angmo dumplings. Charmaine, I forgot to ask, what does that mean?
Angmo is just a local term for what Brian is.
So you mean it means brilliant scientist? I don't think you know. We have to go look this up.
Yeah, let's just go with that. Yeah, it does mean brilliant scientist.
So do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, hi Prof. Alexi, thanks for the talk. We have a couple of questions from the listeners, and I'll just get right to it. This is a question from Aim, and she's curious to know, you mentioned a lot about diet, exercise, sleep, and stress, and like you said that they all contribute to healthy aging, right? But in your view, do you have a particular lifestyle factor that you feel plays the biggest role in healthy aging?
I think nutrition, eating behavior, and physical exercises are the most important.
You also mentioned about stress management. So this is also another question regarding that. So just curious to know, like, if there's been any direct studies like linking stress and to actually like aid the aging process.
It's a good question. I'm a basic scientist in genetics of aging. That's why I don't have my own results on this topic, but I read some interesting trials, how stress management improve our health from the point of view of metabolism and also the level of inflammation and also neurological diseases. There are several investigations on this topic.
So this is slightly different. So David, this is from David, and he said you mentioned that it's important to take prebiotics to maintain a healthy microbiome during aging. But he also wants to know, like, what's your opinion? Do you support taking like probiotics during aging to also facilitate health?
I think we don't need to take prebiotics from pills, from supplements. We need to use prebiotic food on everyday manage. Like every eating, we need some vegetables. Once a day, we need some fruits, and in such way we can supply our body for prebiotics.
You know, and I think that's an important point. You know, a lot of these things come in vegetables and fruits and things you normally eat. And the bioavailability from the fruit or the vegetables a lot higher than just taking the supplement separately. So that's why I think healthy diet is very important. I believe there are some supplements that are going to be helpful for sure, and maybe even some prebiotics and probiotics. But I think that healthy diet goes such a long way.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have this final question, and this is from Max. So because you mentioned a lot of lifestyle interventions, he's just curious to know if, do you think all these lifestyle interventions are additive for slowing aging, or are they mutually exclusive? Or do you think actually doing all of them at once will actually cancel each other out? Like, what is your opinion on that?
About lifestyle interventions, their effects are additive, of course, because we need to improve our sleep, stress management, to improve our eating behavior, physical training, activity. These actions are additive. Supplements, some of them could be mutually exclusive, but we also can apply some supplements, but not all at the same time. Periodically, intermittent.
We have a few more minutes, so maybe I'll take you in a different direction if we can, because you really, this is your second life, the lifestyle and aging and the work on that. You've done a lot of work on genetics and finding geroprotectors using animal models of aging. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of an overview of that, and what's the latest news?
This year is quite tough for laboratory experiments. Yeah. And we started recently the screening of studying of geroprotective effects of extracts of our different kind of herbs and berries from our region. We started maybe 20 or 30 such experiments in an animal model. I'm not sure that we will have very obvious life-extending effects, but most of these extracts are less side effect, have less side effects. That's why it could be applicable as supplements, maybe as functional food in the future. We also started some experiments with the pro-aging effects of extracellular matrix stiffness and screening of compounds that can break these linking or decrease the cellular pathways responsible for not beneficial effects on cells of matrix stiffness. I'm not sure that we will have great results in the near future, but we started these experiments.
And you're doing these screens in flies or in?
We started screening using human cells in vitro and the stiffed matrix after rebasylation of this matrix.
Yeah, sorry, I was talking
Yes.
about the buried libraries. We don't pay enough attention, I think, to extracellular matrix in aging. You know, there's very few interventions that directly affect that, and so I think it's exciting that you're heading in that direction. You know, that sure you're aware of Vera Gorbanova's data on hyaluronan and hyaluronic acid, and extending the length of hyaluronan has such a protective effect in naked mole rats. And so I think there are probably a lot of other ways we can modify extracellular matrix, and it could have a whole range of different benefits in the elasticity of tissues, and that can affect adult stem cell function and probably have anti-cancer effects as well. So I think that's a really interesting area to be going into.
We also studying some particular genes in Drosophila model for their anti-aging properties, overexpressing some proteins that affect acidity of lysosomes, because it drops with aging in our cells, and it could be one of the mechanisms of down-regulation of autophagy, of mitophagy, the quality of mitochondrion. That's why we hope it could be useful.
Yeah, I think that the Drosophila model of fruit flies has really been such a valuable model in aging, and it's along with yeast and the worm C. elegans, it's really created a lot of interesting findings that could be then tested in mice and even in humans. You know, a lot of the work is transitioning now to mice and humans, and you know, I still work on yeast, a little bit on worms. You work on flies. Is there a future for this, for us in these invertebrate models, or is everybody going to be working in mammals?
We recently started a new model for us, Notabranchus furceri, the killifish,
Yeah.
in the Institute of Molecular Biology in Moscow, in collaboration with Anne Kudravtseva, and we sequenced the genomes of some particular species of killifish that could be a better model from our point of view. And recently we've got some results on one of the inhibitors of mTOR, taurine. One, and on this model, and I hope this model will help us to do next step from very simple models like C. elegans and Drosophila to vertebrates, but it's still short-living model, and from this model maybe we can go further for translation.
Yeah, I think that killifish model is exciting. You know, that this is an animal that, first of all, the different subspecies have a widely divergent lifespans, and they can be crossed to, and genetics can be done. But moreover, you can do studies of aging very quickly, and so taurin, you know, it inhibits the TOR pathway. It's a little bit different than rapamycin, that it's a pan-TOR inhibitor, inhibits both TORC1 and TORC2. And I think that there's been a lot of debate about whether it's just TORC1 inhibition that's good for aging, or whether inhibiting both complexes are good. Or some people would even argue that inhibiting TORC1 and activating TORC2 is what you need to do.
Yeah.
So have you compared taurin to a more TORC1 specific inhibitor like rapamycin?
The effects are not too pronounced, not huge, but it was like a proof of concept for this new for us model, new model.
Are you looking at health span parameters as well in addition to lifespan in the fish?
Not in this experiment. Further, we are going to apply some health-related parameters like assessment of osteoporosis, of metabolism, of activity of this model. But we just started this model.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we have time for one more question. And I'm going to ask you the question I get asked all the time and never know how to answer. So maybe you'll do better than I do. So what do you think the most exciting thing in the aging field is? You've been in the field for a while and really promoted this concept of geroprotectors and helped compile lists of geroprotectors so that everybody can compare them themselves and do research. And where's the field going? What excites you right now?
Now we have several kinds of biological aging clocks, and I think it will help us to understand better what really working with the human. But we need new kinds of clocks, like more aging mechanisms based. For example, methylation clock are such kind of clocks, but I'm not sure about this, because if you reset the car speedometer, you could not make your car newer. If methylation is just a byproduct of basic mechanisms, you can reset these, but not affect the basic aging.
Well, that's the question,
processes.
isn't it? Is methylation the byproduct or is it a cause?
Yeah.
I don't think.
It's a great question.
Yeah, we don't know the answer yet, I think. So maybe we can try to answer that in the near future. Well, thanks a lot, Alexei. I hope we can see each other again in person soon after the world starts turning. And I also want to point out that there's a blackout right now for Alexei. So he's we're using natural light and holding windows open. And so this is a heroic effort on your part. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And speaking of clocks, next month in the series, we're going to be talking about biologic clocks. We have a number of great speakers already lined up, including Morgan Levine, Jackie Han, Alex Javrankov, and we're looking for others as well. So there'll be a lot of discussion about how to measure biologic aging next week. And please register on the website for the talk next week. This is going to be Beatrix Verreiken, who's in Norway. She's an expert on exercise and aging, and she's the PI of the NTNU Health Project Exact, which focuses on developing exergames, which I've never heard of before, but I think we can guess, for active, healthy aging and rehabilitation. So that'll be an exciting talk. The chat will continue after this. So go to the chat room if you want to continue the discussion. Thanks, Charmaine and Alexei. And before I leave, we're going to give you a little video clip. We've been listening to senior citizens who are also heads of state. We have a new person joining the club late next month, and let's hear what he thinks about aging.
If elected, you would be the oldest president in American history.
But I'm in good shape.
78 years old, 82 after 4 years. Donald Trump says you have dementia and it's getting worse.
Hey, the same guy who thought that the 9/11 attack was a 7/11 attack, he's talking about dementia?
I'm feeling like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down.